Today I'm going to show you how I cook steak on cast iron. Now steak goes really well with potatoes, so I'm taking 2 red potatoes and dicing them into medium-sized pieces. I like using red potatoes for roasting as they tend to hold their shape a little bit better than other ones, and between using different types of potatoes the only difference is the texture. I added way too much olive oil to this large 12-inch skillet and then salted and peppered the potatoes to taste. Mix them and then put them into a 400-degree oven until they became fork tender. You want to check this occasionally and stir. Next I'm going to make a garlic and rosemary butter. I'm using a 1/4 stick of butter and a whole stick of rosemary. I stem the rosemary and grate the garlic using a zester into a fine paste. You can also use a garlic press if you have one of those instead. Once that is done, I use a cold 10 1/4 inch skillet, which is the same skillet that I'm going to be cooking the steak in. I put this on very low heat. My goal here is not to brown any of the rosemary or garlic, and just let it simmer for about 5 minutes to extract the flavors. If it gets too warm, just shut off the cast iron and let it really just kind of simmer at a low temperature. Once that's done, I put it into a small container. Now if you put this in the fridge and let it set, you'll have a nice butter to put on breads or any other thing that you find needs like kind of a garlic rosemary flavor to it. My favorite type of steak for cooking is a ribeye steak, as it has this kind of corner section that is very tender and has the most amount of flavor. I also cut my ribeye steaks in half, so this is about half as thick as a normal ribeye steak. To a very hot skillet, I add this steak. As you can see, some of the garlic was a little bit browned. I salt and pepper one side of this, and then I do not move the steak. I let it sit and cook on one side for about 2 minutes until it develops a nice crust. Once it has a nice crust on one side, I flip it over and go for an additional 2 minutes for it to be a little bit pink in the center. I don't like my steaks that rare, and by cutting it in half you get a much more kind of tender steak at a pink color. Now once everything is done, I add some of that butter to the top of the steak, and believe me, this is a very tasty steak. Now to show off how tender the steak is, I'm using a butter knife. I mean, look at it, it's amazingly tender. As you can see, I'm having no trouble cut through the steak at all using the butter knife. It just glides right through like a hot butter knife through butter. It is so tender, it's great. It's not like I didn't have any other knife to use that was presentable other than a kitchen knife. Look at it go, it's so tender, it's great, it's amazing. It's super tender. I'm having no difficulty here. Just a super tender steak. And there you go. If you enjoyed what you watched here, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.